I never thought of myself as someone easy to use. I work hard, I pay my bills on time, I keep my small apartment clean and warm. I'm not rich, but I'm stable. And for a long time, I believed that stability was a good thing to offer someone. Turns out, for the wrong person, it's not love they see, it's opportunity. I met Ethan a little over a year ago. He was charming in a soft, almost lazy way, the kind of guy who leaned on a counter and made eye contact like it was his full-time job. He remembered tiny things I said, like what coffee I liked, or how I folded my receipts. He would show up with a latte or a chocolate bar and act like he'd done something heroic. And back then, it felt sweet. In the beginning, he made me feel seen. If he stayed over after a date, he'd say things like, "Your place feels peaceful," or "I sleep better here." I didn't mind. I liked waking up with someone next to me for once. But the nights he stayed turned into weekends, and weekends turned into 3, 4, 5 days in a row. His hoodie appeared on my chair, his game console on my TV stand, then a razor in my bathroom, then a backpack in my closet. And every time I hesitated, he had a soft explanation. "I don't want to lug all this back and forth. I thought you didn't mind." "It's temporary, babe." Temporary, such a flexible word. The first real warning sign showed up on a Wednesday. We were about to grab lunch, and he patted his pockets dramatically. "Babe, I swear, I just had my wallet. Can you spot me? I'll send it back tonight." I didn't think anything of it. It was $15. I've spent more on impulse snacks. He never sent it back, but I didn't push. Then it turned into little things. "Can you cover this pizza? Can you grab groceries this time? Can you pay the electric bill? My paycheck's delayed." Always small enough to feel harmless, always reasonable enough to let slide. But the sliding never stopped. He started spending whole days at my place while I was at work. My fridge emptied twice as fast. My laundry detergent vanished. My Wi-Fi slowed to a crawl because he stayed up all night gaming while I slept. And every time I mentioned something, even gently, he'd act wounded. "I've had a rough month. You know I'm trying. Do you want me to feel like a burden?" And the crazy part? I didn't. I didn't want to make him feel bad. I thought, maybe supporting him was what partners were supposed to do. But support goes both ways. At least it should. One evening, I came home after a long shift. I was exhausted. The kind of exhausted where your bones feel heavy. Ethan was sprawled on the couch, my couch, surrounded by takeout containers I didn't recognize. My controller in his hand. My blanket. My leftover lasagna, the one I was saving for the next day. I remember standing there, looking at the mess, waiting for him to notice me. When he did, he smiled lazily and said, "Hey babe, the game crashed earlier, so I had to restart. Can you heat me some tea?" That was the first time something inside me tightened. Still, I didn't say anything. I cleaned up, took a shower, made us both tea. I told myself it was just a phase, that maybe he was struggling more than he let on. But then came the moment that broke everything. A week later, he didn't hear me come home early. He was in the kitchen talking on the phone, loud, confident, laughing. I paused in the hallway when I heard my name. "Bro, trust me," he said. "She likes helping. It makes her feel useful or whatever. I get free food, free place. She even drives me around. Why would I move out? It's too convenient." Convenient. I felt the floor tilt under me. He kept talking, unaware I was standing 10 feet away, listening to him describe my life as if it were some kind of all-inclusive resort. And suddenly, everything made sense. The forgotten wallet, the temporary stay, the bills, the excuses, the effortless comfort he lived in while I bent myself into knots trying to be understanding. I didn't interrupt him. I didn't cry. I didn't even walk into the room. I just stood there, letting the truth settle. He wasn't my partner. He wasn't struggling. He wasn't grateful. He was using me because it was easy. And that night, for the first time, I realized something even more important. If someone can use you without guilt, they will, unless you stop them. After that night, something in me shifted, quietly, like a door clicking shut in a long hallway. I didn't confront him right away. I didn't scream or demand explanations. I just watched him. Really watched him. Every habit, every request, every moment he expected my time, my money, my patience, all of it suddenly looked different. When he asked for $10 for gas money, even though he didn't have a car, I noticed. When he left a pile of dishes in the sink and said, "You're better at this than I am," I noticed. When he used my shampoo, my razor, my Netflix account, my everything, I noticed. And the more I noticed, the weaker the old guilt felt, the kinder I became to myself, and the clearer my mind grew. I decided I wasn't going to explode or kick him out during an argument. People like Ethan thrive on dramas they can twist in their favor. Tears make them victims. Anger gives them excuses. I wasn't giving him either. My revenge would be quiet, clean, surgical. It started small. The next morning, he asked, "Hey babe, can you send me 20? I'm meeting the guys later." I smiled gently. "Oh, I don't have anything spare right now." A tiny lie, but it tasted like freedom. Later that week, he said, "Can you drive me to Chris's place? I promised I'd help with something." "Sorry," I said, grabbing my keys. "I'm picking up an extra shift." Another lie. Another slice through the rope he'd tied around me. He didn't suspect anything. If anything, he seemed annoyed. The convenience he'd built his life around started wobbling. He'd sigh loudly when I didn't bend instantly. He'd mumble about how relationships are about being there for each other. And I would nod sweetly, even though he hadn't been there for me in months. Then I changed my daily routine. I started waking up earlier, deliberately slamming the cupboard a little louder, flipping on the kitchen light, running the blender for my morning smoothies. He hated mornings. I joined a gym near work, so I got home later. And when I did get home, I didn't rush to cook. Sometimes I brought food for myself and said lightly, "Oh, I didn't know you'd be here. I already ate." He'd stare at the empty table like he couldn't compute it. I also made one particular adjustment that nearly drove him insane. I turned off the Wi-Fi before going to sleep. The first night, he came into the bedroom holding his controller like a wounded soldier. "Babe, the Wi-Fi's down." "Really?" I said. "Maybe the router overheated." "It happens." And I rolled over and pretended to fall asleep. Every one of these little inconveniences chipped away at him. Every no, every boundary, every refusal forced him to feel life without my constant, unseen labor smoothing it for him. While he scrambled, I prepared. I collected every one of his belongings scattered around my apartment: shirts, socks, chargers, game controllers, random gadgets he borrowed from friends. I packed them into neat boxes and slid them under my bed. I spoke to my landlord and mentioned, in a casual tone, that a friend had been staying over too often, and I wanted to clarify the rules. He frowned and said, "No long-term guests without approval." Perfect. I told my friends I needed space from Ethan, so when the breakup came, they wouldn't be surprised. No one knew the details. I kept them to myself like a weapon. The more I prepared, the calmer I became. Ethan, meanwhile, grew increasingly irritated. Less patient, less sweet. The guy who once charmed me now just assumed I existed to fix everything for him. One night, he came up behind me in the kitchen while I washed dishes and said, "Can you do my laundry too? I've got nothing clean for tomorrow." And I remember looking at him, really looking, and thinking how strange it was that I once mistook laziness for softness. I dried my hands, turned around slowly, and said, "I'll handle something for you soon. Don't worry." He grinned, clueless. "Knew I could count on you." "Mm-hmm," I said, even smiling a little. "You can." But in my head, another sentence formed. Calm, icy, final. "You can count on me to end this exactly the way you deserve." The moment came on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day no one remembers, except the person who's been quietly preparing for it. Ethan was sitting on my couch in the same spot he always sank into, scrolling on his phone, surrounded by the usual chaos he left behind. A half-eaten sandwich on the coffee table, his shoes in the middle of the floor. My blanket wadded up under him, like it was some kind of throne cushion. I stood in the doorway for a second, watching him. Not with anger, with clarity. I finally saw him without the fog of excuses I used to make for him. Just a man who had never planned to give anything back. I walked in, set my bag down, and said calmly, "You need to get your things." He didn't look up. "Huh?" "Your things," I repeated. "It's time for you to take them." He finally lifted his eyes, frowning like a confused child. "Wait! What? What are you talking about?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't tremble. I just pointed toward the hallway, where 4 neatly packed boxes sat waiting, the ones I'd hidden under my bed. "You're moving out," I said. "Today." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Very funny, you almost got me there." "I'm not joking." The laugh died slowly, like a bad engine sputtering. "You're serious?" "Yes." He blinked. "But where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my responsibility." He stared at me, stunned, as if responsibility was some foreign language. "But I've been staying here," he stuttered. "We're together. You can't just throw me out." "Actually," I said gently, "I can. And I am." He stood abruptly. "Because of what? Because I asked for help? Because I'm going through stuff?" "No," I said. "Because you're using me. And you've been using me for a long time." He threw his hands up. "Oh my God, not this again. You're being dramatic. Relationships are about supporting each other." "Supporting," I repeated, nodding slowly. "Not feeding, funding, housing, cleaning, and rescuing someone who gives nothing in return." "That's not fair," he snapped. "For once," I said, "it is." That's when the anger arrived. Hot, desperate, panicked anger. The kind that appears when someone realizes their comfort is leaving. "Do you even know how much I've been dealing with?" he barked. "My job situation." "You haven't applied to a job in 3 months. My mental health has not stopped you from gaming 10 hours a day. My family problems. You never mentioned any." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since I'd known him, he had nothing ready. I picked up one of the boxes, placed it gently at his feet, and said, "You need to go. My landlord knows you've been staying here. He's not okay with it." His face tightened. "You told your landlord?" "I did." "And you didn't tell me?" "No," I said, "because I didn't need your approval to end something that stopped being a relationship a long time ago." He looked around the room, like he expected some hidden camera crew to jump out and yell that it was all a prank. But nothing happened. Just silence. Real, heavy silence that made him finally see he'd run out of excuses. "You're making a mistake," he said, voice suddenly small. "You're gonna regret this." I walked to the door and opened it. "Goodbye, Ethan." He stood there for several seconds, waiting for me to crack, waiting for the old version of me to appear. The one who bent, softened, made room for him. But she wasn't here anymore. Eventually, he bent down, grabbed a box, and stepped outside. When the door clicked shut behind him, I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even sigh. I just felt free. The next day, the ripple began. His friends, the ones who thought he was down on his luck and that I was some generous, patient girlfriend, suddenly heard the other side. Maybe Ethan tried to spin the story first. I don't know. But when people asked why we broke up, I told the truth, simply and without emotion. He lived off me. He didn't work. He didn't help. He lied. And he told people it was convenient to use me. It spread. And nothing ruins a man who depends on convenience faster than losing his image of innocence. Within a week, he messaged me, then called, then showed up outside my building. I never answered. I never opened the door. Silence became my final strike. Cleaner than shouting, stronger than closure, and far more painful for someone like him. The first morning after Ethan was gone felt strangely bright. Not joyful, not triumphant, just clear. The air in my apartment felt lighter. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. I made coffee in my own kitchen, with my own groceries, and for the first time in months, the mug was exactly where I'd left it. No sticky fingerprints on the handle, no half-finished cups scattered around, no controller on the counter, no lingering smell of takeout or energy drinks, just peace. I didn't realize how much space he had occupied until he wasn't in it anymore. That week became a soft reset. I deep cleaned the apartment, not to erase him, but to reclaim it. I rearranged furniture, washed blankets, threw away things I'd tolerated only because he liked them. I filled the fridge with real food. I slept better. I walked around barefoot without stepping on stray socks that weren't mine. And slowly, quietly, my life started to fit me again. I got back into habits I'd abandoned. Morning stretches, cooking proper meals, taking evening walks, talking to friends without feeling like I had to hide stress. I picked up extra shifts because I wanted to, not because someone else needed my money. My paychecks finally stayed mine. My time stayed mine. My home stayed mine. Even my thoughts felt mine again. Ethan didn't disappear, of course. People like him rarely do. A week after the breakup, he sent me a long message about how he deserved closure. I didn't respond. 2 days later, another message, this time angry. 2 more days. One that was desperate, then guilty, then blaming, then sweet, then nostalgic. I didn't answer a single one. He showed up near my building once. I walked past him without slowing down, without apologizing, without explaining. That single moment, not giving him the reaction he wanted, felt better than any dramatic scream ever could. Over time, the messages stopped, the calls faded, the guilt evaporated, and the silence became comfortable, warm even, like a blanket I hadn't known I needed. Months passed, and life kept unfolding the way it should when no one is draining you dry. I joined a small weekend class, pottery of all things. I'd always wanted to try it, but never had the energy. I started running again, not fast, not impressive, but steadily, and the rhythm felt good. I decorated my balcony with small plants. They grew better than I expected, and a part of me laughed at the symbolism. Somewhere in the middle of all this, I met someone new. Not in a romantic whirlwind, not in some dramatic movie moment. It was simple, calm. We bumped into each other a few times at the cafe near my work, then finally exchanged names, then numbers. He carried himself easily, paid for his own drinks, asked about my day without sounding like he needed something from me. With him, I never had to shrink or stretch myself to make things work. He didn't treat kindness like a currency. He didn't expect caretaking. He didn't turn my stability into a feeding ground. He was just normal and respectful and present. But the story isn't really about him. It's about who I became without Ethan's weight tied to my ankles. Because the truth is, the biggest revenge wasn't kicking Ethan out, or exposing him, or letting his friends see who he really was. The biggest revenge was finally choosing myself. One evening, months later, I sat outside on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the city unwind. The sky was fading into soft blues and golds. My plants rustled lightly in the breeze. My phone buzzed on the table. A message from a friend, a meme, something harmless and funny. And I thought, with a peaceful certainty I hadn't felt in years, I didn't lose anything when I lost him. I got everything back. Later that night, tucked between my notifications, I noticed a message from Ethan, the first one in weeks. Just one sentence. "You've changed." I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because he was right. I had changed, back into myself.